I'm the Communications Director for the Family Institute of Connecticut, and I'm testifying in opposition to SB 144. I also just want to mention in regards to the last testimony that if you look up the address of NARAL Pro-Choice, Connecticut, it's listed as 1 Main Street, Hartford. If you look up the abortion clinic, Hartford GYN, it's 1 Main Street, Hartford. That's because NARAL for the last few years has operated inside of the abortion clinic. They work together. So if you are a clinic escort at Hartford GYN, you are also very well connected to NARAL as they shared the same building for years. That being said, I think that we have to look at this legislation in light of what's happening across the country and the fact that we are very divided in regards to abortion. I was just in Missouri. In the state of Missouri, they have a tax credit for pregnancy resource centers. If you donate money to a pregnancy resource center, you get money back in your taxes. Now, why would the centers in Missouri have a tax credit? And the centers here, they have this bill that attacks them. Well, I think it has something to do with the elected officials and whether you live in a state where there are a majority of pro-life elected officials or there are a majority of pro-choice elected officials. A couple points that I want to make today. The bill will only impact the bad actors and the bad centers. Well, we've had 3 public hearings and we don't yet know who the bad actors are. And we also haven't heard who the good centers are. According to NARAL, we know this, every center is a bad actor. Every center is a fake clinic. This is very clear. This is what they say. In addition, women are we're told that women are too terrified to testify. I understand being afraid. My mother scheduled to abort me in Hartford, Connecticut. The abortion doctor yelled at her and told her she couldn't leave the room, and she ran out. So I understand being afraid, but yet she was able to tell me that story. And it's hard to believe that in 30 years, I don't even know, 40,000, how many thousands of women, that they're all terrified when we are in the midst of a Me Too movement and we're in the midst of, yesterday was International Women's Day. Women are empowered to share their stories, but we're supposed to believe that all of them are afraid. I think that's insulting, personally, to women. Should I finish or I want to be polite? Okay. Lastly, I want to say this. The idea that if pregnancy centers are doing nothing wrong, they shouldn't be afraid, they shouldn't worry, that's insulting. It's the same logic behind, well, if Black people, if you're just obeying the police, then you shouldn't have to worry about police brutality. As long as you're just doing what's right, you shouldn't have to worry about police brutality. But you have to worry about police brutality as an African American person if you're targeted by people who see you with a bias. And in the state of Connecticut, which is primarily a pro-abortion state, the pregnancy centers are being targeted by people who see them with a bias, who think that they are fake clinics. So therefore, they do have to worry, because if Attorney General Tong, who is endorsed by NARAL, who is pro-abortion, who every time he has an opportunity to do a press conference on abortion, stands up and supports NARAL, which is a group that calls them all fake clinics, they shouldn't be worried that he's going to be in charge of deciding what language is deceptive or not. I think Planned Parenthood's worried that Trump and Pence are in charge, and they should be worried that Trump and Pence are in charge because they hold pro-life views. So if we would tell Planned Parenthood, oh, don't be worried that Trump and Pence are in charge because nothing they do is going to affect you because everything is just, right and fair, then maybe pro-life centers shouldn't be worried about a pro-abortion attorney general deciding what language is correct. And then after that, being able to financially punish them because he might not agree with pregnant needs help. He might think that's deceptive when it's not. This is a political bill.
I'm sorry, I have to stop you there, okay?
Okay. Thanks for letting me say a lot more.
Of course. Any questions or comments from the committee? Senator Summers.
Yes, thank you for your testimony
You're
this
welcome.
afternoon. Do you happen to know, this is maybe, I came in a little late, so I might not have gotten this. Do you know how many women in the state of Connecticut pregnancy crisis centers have had in contact with each other? How many they've helped through, the last 5 years or
so? Are you asking? I just want to make sure. Are you asking the question? How many pregnancy centers are in touch with each other?
No, how many women in Connecticut have they helped?
Oh, I mean, thousands. I worked for, full disclosure, I worked for the ABC Women's Center for 4 years as a client service manager, and I just got a little graphic that in 2019 there was 266,000 pregnancy tests. Over 360,000 women were assisted with material resources. And in 2019 alone, over 1 million women were helped with educational classes, and over 600,000 had ultrasound. So a lot of people. And I personally, when I worked for the ABC Women's Center as a client service manager, I oversaw every woman who came into that center. I talked with them and I had very close contact. And so that's why this is personally so frustrating, because they do such great work.
So that was total. That wasn't just Connecticut, right?
No, this is Connecticut stats.
So 2019 we helped over 1 million people.
That's correct. Oh, sorry, that's dollars.
Oh, okay.
Dollars. $1 million worth of.
We don't
I'm
even
sorry.
have that many people here, so
I know. I thought that was pretty remarkable, but I'm sorry. These are dollars. So over $1 million was given in educational classes, and over $1 million worth of pregnancy tests. But I would imagine. I mean, I would say tens of thousands. I mean, if you do the math, I'm not great at math, so I'll put that out there. If my husband was here, he's better at it. But they've existed for close to 30 years. And I think it's probably important for people to understand why they even exist. So, like I mentioned before with my mom walking out of her abortion appointment, pregnancy centers exist to offer an alternative to abortion. So 1973, Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton made abortion legal up into the 9th month. And so therefore, there's been groups of people that, lead pregnancy centers that said, okay, so now we have abortion as the legal law of the land. And so women know they can go to an abortion clinic and legally have an abortion. But perhaps they may need somewhere else that they can go for an alternative to abortion. My own mom, who was pressured to get an abortion, didn't have anywhere to go. She went to her church, and her mentor told her, "You're sinning. You had sex outside of marriage. Don't come back to this church." So she then went to get an abortion at Mount Sinai Hospital in 1981. And thankfully, a janitor saw her crying in the hallway and was like, "Do you want to have your baby?" And my mom said yes. And she said, God will give you the strength. But it shouldn't have been a janitor. My mom, if she knew about a pregnancy resource center, she could have went there, because, again, they offer alternatives to abortion. That's why it's so important that both, these centers are able to offer an alternative to the many abortion clinics that we have in Connecticut. We have very, very strong abortion laws in Connecticut, some of the strongest in the entire country.
I would just, for me, this bill is it's not about whether you're pro-abortion or against abortion. It's about what the bill is titled, the Deceptive Advertising Practices.
Yes.
So, do you, in your opinion, with your experience, do you believe that if this bill goes forward, that we need to really define what the term deceptive means? And that would apply for me. It would need to apply for everyone involved.
And I would say other words as well, like bad actor. So what does that mean? Because there's multiple words. Fake clinic, bad actor, those things would have to be defined, because I know that ABC Women's Center Representative Liz Lenihan, in the previous year's public hearing testimony, when they asked her who are the bad actors, she said, well, I know of one in Middletown. Well, that's the one that I worked for. So what makes it a bad actor? So yeah, those things have to be defined. I would say that the only thing that's deceptive, this is just my personal opinion, is if a center does not let people know that they don't perform or refer for abortions. And so if a pregnancy center has a disclaimer on their website, or if you call them on the phone, or if you walk into a center and they say, we do not perform or refer for abortions, then that's clear advertising. And they do that. They let you know that.
We use that term bad actor a lot here in the legislature. We say just because there's one bad actor doesn't mean that we should legislate, a solution around one bad actor.
Yeah, I'd only really heard of it over the last couple of years with these meetings. But I think that it is confusing because, again, the Attorney General is endorsed and supported by NARAL. He's very publicly come out in support of this group that is championing this legislation. So if he does think that something these centers say is deceptive, then they are going to have to fight, legal battles. And remember, they're not only not getting any money, but they are also raising all of their support by individual donors. And that's a really difficult burden on these pregnancy resource centers. And I could be wrong, I don't know about this, but I'd even heard that the legislation, if they even were to win, they couldn't recoup their costs.
So I'm taking from your answer that you do feel that if we pass something that says deceptive needs to be very clearly defined.
It does. And I would also just say that we've had a lot of conversation about this applying to both places. Like, okay, if this applies to the pregnancy centers, then it should also apply to Planned Parenthood. And while that is true, you still have to remember that this is a strong pro-abortion state. Not that this argument is about abortion, but in a strong pro-abortion state, not only would you have to make sure that this is being applied to Planned Parenthood, but you'd also have to make sure that they're being really held accountable by elected officials that may favor Planned Parenthood. So it wouldn't be enough just to say that, okay, let's create legislation that says, because for instance, Planned Parenthood in Connecticut's only inspected, I think, once every 3 years. In other states, Planned Parenthood is inspected a lot more often. So depending on a state's viewpoint, with their political leaders who are in power, depending on the way that they see the pro-life issue, they can hold Planned Parenthood more accountable or not, and just in regards to abortion. You know, there are many southern states that have bans on abortion. There's many southern states that require that teenagers have to tell their parents if they want to have an abortion. Connecticut doesn't require any of those things. We don't have a parental notification ban. We don't have a parental consent ban. I just mentioned that because in order for it to be truly fair, you'd have to have elected officials that would be willing to truly hold Planned Parenthood accountable as they would want to hold the pregnancy resource centers.
Okay, and again, I don't want to pit, my purpose here is not to pit Planned Parenthood against the pregnancy crisis centers, so that's not my intent. I'm talking about the intent of the bill only, and it's and the language of the bill, and I would agree that it's not easy to look at something as deceptive because we all have our own opinion on what that is. But I was interested in what you had to say about the clinic in Hartford. Does it share office space with NARAL, or can you explain that a little bit, because that hasn't been disclosed?
So there's two buildings. One building is, and you can go take a look, it's actually walking distance from here, it's not too far, so you can see it's on 1 Main Street, and there's two buildings. There's one building that is the abortion clinic, which is Hartford GYN. They are actually the only independent abortion clinic in the state of Connecticut that's not a Planned Parenthood. And then right next to that is Hartford Women's Center, which is the Pregnancy Resource Center, which has just, as we know, opened up recently in the last couple of years. So for the last few years, NARAL and the abortion clinic have been located in the same building. So NARAL, which is the pro-abortion activist group, they moved inside of the same building as the abortion clinic. And previous staff members shared responsibilities. And so one of the women who worked for NARAL Pro-Choice Connecticut, her name was Erica, she was also a clinic counselor, a sidewalk counselor. And they also, I think, shared social media and other things. And so they were in the same building. Now, I think they did recently move out of that building. But if you go on their website, if you go to NARAL Pro-Choice Connecticut's website and you look for their address, you will see 1 Main Street. If you go look up the address of the abortion clinic, you will see 1 Main Street, which shows that they were located in the same building for the last couple of years, working together, because that's what they do. NARAL is a pro-abortion rights group, so they work very closely with the abortion industry, and particularly protecting that clinic. It's very important to them to protect it because it is the last independent abortion clinic.
Okay,
and that's why they feel threatened that the pregnancy center is next door.
But again, we can't.
In my personal opinion.
Okay, but we can't control who sets up where. That's not our venue. We can't say you can't have an office within this location. That's not something that we can do. That's just...
Which is good, because I think that you should be able to put places next to each other. That's what happens when you choose a fast food restaurant. You see Burger King, you see McDonald's, you see all these places, and you get to decide as the consumer which one you want to go to. So I think it's great that a pregnancy center can be next to an abortion clinic, and then women can decide which one they would like to visit.
Thank you for your testimony.
You're welcome.
Just a minute, please. Ms. Bennett, just a minute, please. Are there any other questions or comments? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you come back, but I have to ask if anybody else had any questions or comments.
That's good. That's right.
Thank you very much.